Hello everyone, my name is David McMurdo and welcome to my channel where I reveal the spiritual in everything. Subscribe because I upload new content every single day, including a live stream on the Sundays for those that support me on Patreon. I'm here to spread the very essential message of experiential spirituality, which is nothing less than the mystic message itself. And if you want to help me do that, then you can support me on Patreon for £5 or more a month, for which you will gain access to my Patreon blog and for which you will receive a copy of my book, Experiential Spirituality, The Mystic Answer to Everything, in PDF format. Thank you very much to those of you that support me on Patreon thus far, because you really do make this kind of daily content possible. As many of you will know, I recently did an interview with Guru Viking. Now, that interview is not yet on his channel. I'm not sure when it will be, and I don't know if this bit will actually make the final edit. But at a certain point in our discussion, Steve asked me, what is the truth? What is the truth with a capital T? What is this really all about? It's a very obvious question, and yet the only response I can ever really give to that question is it depends upon who's asking. And that can be a tremendously frustrating answer for many souls, because they ask themselves, well, what does that mean exactly? Does it mean that the truth is relative? And the answer is no, it doesn't mean the truth is relative. There is certainly objective truth, and there is certainly absolute truth, ultimate truth. However, it's the only answer one can give to that question, because each soul is at a different stage on their own spiritual journey, and therefore souls are only ready to receive certain answers. If you try to give someone an answer that they're not ready for, then it will be useless to them, and therefore there's no point giving them that answer. So, for example, it is not necessary to have a religion in order to attain enlightenment, salvation, or whatever term you might like to ascribe to that ultimate realization. But if a soul has a mindset that convinces them otherwise, then it would be best to tell them to persist in their tradition, because based upon where they are in their spiritual journey, that's the most useful advice you could give at that time. So is it the ultimate truth? Is it the objective truth? No, it's not, but it's the truth that they need to hear at that point in their spiritual journey. So most often in my videos, I'm not expressing the greatest, the highest truths. I'm expressing those truths that I think will be most useful for those watching at any given time. And this is why the history of mysticism and mystic literature is filled with apparent paradoxes. Even in this video, I have used a term that refers to something that is kind of misleading and is not actually the truth, because I've spoken of a spiritual journey. Now, is salvation, is enlightenment, is ultimate spiritual awakening, is it really a matter of a journey? The answer is no, because a journey necessarily implies going from one place to another. The spiritual journey, as it were, is often portrayed as going to seek something out there, which is necessarily false in terms of what realization actually is, because the truth is that you don't have to go anywhere or find anything to be what you already are. And yet, this spiritual journey is part of the game, as it were. It's part of the play of consciousness, and therefore one has to talk in terms that are not necessarily ultimately true. One has to talk of a spiritual journey and of obtaining enlightenment, even though that's not really what's going on. But if you express things otherwise, then it's not going to be useful to those that are listening. The truth is that I have barely begun to scratch the surface of spirituality here on this channel, simply because if I stated things in a matter-of-fact fashion, if I laid things out as they ultimately are, then few would get anything from my content. I have to speak in a way that is going to be useful to individuals. And so one must not think that the spiritual journey has no end. If you mistake the spiritual journey or your spirituality as being an intellectual project, which religionists necessarily do, then your spiritual journey, your spiritual quest, it necessarily has no end, because there is always more information to obtain. If you lived 5,000 lifetimes in this world, there would still be things you wouldn't have the time to learn in terms of intellectual information. The truth, with a capital T, is not something that can be grasped intellectually, and it's therefore not something that can be verbally articulated. It has to be experienced. And so the most useful thing that I can do here on this channel is explain how you can enter into that experience. And there's something else that's worth remembering about myself, is that in human years, I'm relatively young. I'm 37 years old at the moment. I turn 38 in October, and relatively speaking, that's quite young, especially for someone who speaks on this kind of subject. And this relates to always being honest about what you know and what you don't know, something that I emphasize a lot, because I am still learning in my own way. I have only ever said that I can guide you into directly experiencing the spiritual, and that's no small claim by itself. But what I have never said is that I know everything about everything, and anyone who puts themselves in the position that I put myself in, who claims otherwise, is going to end up in trouble, because their claim, first of all, is false, so they're deceiving others and deceiving themselves, and because they're living a lie, it's going to come back to bite them at some point, because inevitably at some point someone will know more than them on a particular subject, and if they've been pretending all along that they know everything about everything, then that's going to be a problem for them. You know, just because you attain enlightenment or salvation or whatever term you might want to, again, ascribe to that realization, it doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to change a plug. So you have to be realistic about these things and be honest again about what you know and what you don't know. On Wednesday, I made a video talking about reincarnation, and during the course of that video, I said that, I have to go against the consensus when it comes to the ancient Gnostics, because most would accept that the ancient Gnostics believed in reincarnation, but I'm familiar with the Gnostic texts, and I've just never seen any solid evidence of that. There are certain verses that people point to, but I can think of a better interpretation of those particular verses. Now, one of my moderators, Tate, left a comment on that video, and he mentioned two specific verses from the Apocryphon of John, which is a Sethian Gnostic text, and it's a text that I haven't studied over much, simply because it's one of the most obscure texts within Gnosticism. It's basically the Gnostic equivalent of the Old Testament Kings and Chronicles. It has like a genealogy of the Archons. It's a very dense read, to say the least. But Tate pointed to two particular verses that actually were a compelling case that this particular group of Gnostics, the Sethians, may well have believed in reincarnation. And so obviously, I deleted his comments and I blocked him straight away. If you openly contradict me, straight to jail. If you have a different take on a subject than I do, straight to jail. If you don't like my videos, jail, straight away. And that was that problem dealt with. No, I'm just joking. I didn't do that. I responded to him and I said, that's a very compelling argument there, and I'm glad you brought that to my attention, because I don't have to pretend otherwise, because I've never pretended to know everything there is to know intellectually, and I don't have to, because again, the spiritual journey, the ultimate spiritual truth, is not intellectual knowledge that one can absorb. It's not intellectual knowledge that one can learn, and therefore it can't be articulated. It's a direct experience of the spiritual, and that's what I point people to on this channel. That's what I try to get people to experience on this channel. So if someone is going to ask me, as Steve did in my interview, what is the truth, the answer has to be, it depends upon who's asking, because different souls are at different places in their spiritual journey, and they're only ready for certain answers. If I was to just matter-of-factly state how things are, then it would be useful to very few souls. And again, that's the reason that there are so many apparent paradoxes in the history of mystic thought.
And so ultimately, the truth is not an intellectual conclusion that you come to, not the truth with a capital T. The truth is something that you come to experience. But the way you come to experience that from your current position will depend upon what your current position is on your spiritual journey. And that can be quite a challenge for me in trying to make these videos, because of course there are all manner of souls and all manner of different places on their spiritual journey watching my videos. So I have to make videos, I have to say things that I think are going to be the most useful thing for those souls to hear, even if they are not the ultimate expression of the truth that I could really give. So it's a tricky question, but the important point to remember is that the truth is not some intellectual conclusion, it's a direct experience that cannot be articulated in any case. And also the fact that I am still relatively young in human years, and so while my own spiritual quest ended some time ago, I still have so much more I could learn on a million different subjects. So as I make these videos, I'm always refining, for example, the method, the way in which I articulate things, even the format of my videos, the kind of videos I make, and in all kinds of ways I'm still learning, because I'm still ultimately a soul in human form that is continuing their experience of this reality just as you all are. And that's why I don't pretend to know everything, because I don't need to pretend to know everything, because I know what is most important, and that's what I'm trying to express on this channel. Now I have to be honest with you, recently I said that whenever I make a video, I consciously think to myself, what can individuals hope to get out of this? I have to make this video useful. And in the case of this video, I couldn't come to a definitive answer to that question in terms of what you might get out of this. Because of the nature of the subject that I'm talking about here, the answer to that question when I asked myself that question was kind of vague, but still, my intuition is telling me that there are some of you out there that do need to hear this particular explanation, even if my mind can't put a ribbon on it, as it were. So I hope you found this video useful, or at least interesting. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, and I will see you tomorrow.